Hey everyone, I'm in the bathroom and what I'm going to be doing today is installing the backer board in the tub surround. So stay tuned. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to cover several things here. We're going to start off first of all talking about the goals with regard to installing the backer board in the tub surround. So the number one absolute top of the list goal I would say is making sure that this area behind me is watertight. I think that's extremely important because I don't want to just be slapping this backer board on the wall and then putting the tile on top of that, declaring everything done, and then have water leaking into the walls and then have to tear everything apart again. So that's absolutely top of the list. Number one goal is to make sure that this area behind me is watertight. Number two goal I would say is to make sure that the tile backer board is installed nice and flat, because we're going to have to put tile on top of that. We need to have a really nice flat substrate for that tile. So we don't want to have tiles sitting next to each other that have lippage where one tile is sitting higher than the other. So the absolute number two goal I would say would be to make sure that the tile backer board is installed nice and flat. Alright, so before we go ahead and install the tile backer board, there's one other thing we need to cover here, and that is this tile flange or lip of the tub. Because the backer board either needs to come down on top of the lip of the tub or it needs to come down in front of the lip of the tub. So you can do it either way. We'll talk about why you would want to do it one way versus do it the other way and what the implications are of doing it each way. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, so here's a diagram that I put together based on information in the DensShield installation guide. So there are a couple different options for installing DensShield tile backer, and most likely any tile backer you choose is going to have similar methods for installing it. So let's start with option number one. You can see what's depicted there. We've got our wall, we've got our tub, we've got our tile backer material, and we've got our tile. And you'll notice also that the tub lip is a lot more pronounced in this diagram, and that's so that it stands out and it's more clear as to what I'm trying to convey here. So in this diagram, we've got our tile backer sitting on top of the tub lip. And you'll notice that I also optionally put some sealant in there because I figured, why not? I want to make sure that that area is really watertight. So I'll show later on what kind of sealant I'm going to use to seal that up. So right in front of the tile backer is our tile, which goes into the tub area. And then there's also a gap with some sealant there too. So that is option number one. That's the option that I'm going to go with. And I'll talk about why I chose that one instead of option number two. All right, so on the right hand side, we've got option number two. And you'll notice we have a wall, we've got our tub, and then we've also got something called furring there. So furring strips. And we've got our tile backer and our tile. So the furring strips, what those do will actually push the backer board material out to where instead of the backer board material sitting on top of the tub lip, it's actually in the tub area. So you can do it that way if you'd like, but you need to make sure you have a minimum 1/8 inch gap according to the instructions. And then in front of that would also go our tile, and we have some sealant underneath our tile too in that little gap. So you can do it that way if you'd like. I chose to not do it that way, and the reason why I chose to not do it that way is because when you put furring strips up, that's going to bring your wall out. And so then when you go to put your drywall up to match up with that tile backer material, your wall is no longer going to be in alignment with your backer material. So you're going to have to fur out your walls on the side in the rest of your bathroom if you want to make sure that the walls and the tile backer material are all in alignment with each other. So that's why I chose to not do that. It's a little bit more work, and I didn't think it was worth the effort to go through that whole process, and I chose option number one instead. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with this back wall first. That's the exterior wall. So check out video number 46 where I talked a lot about insulating this exterior wall and what that means with regard to all the various materials you're going to have to install on the wall. So like moisture barriers and vapor barriers and the different backer boards and shooter curties and weedies and all that. So check out that video number 46, and hopefully that information will be helpful for you. So typically in an alcove style bathroom like this, it's about 5 feet wide or 60 inches. And normally the sheets of product like DensShield, Durock, and Hardy Backer are 3x5 or 3 foot by 5 foot sheets. Now I actually bought the DensShield that I have in 4x8 sheets, and that's because I have an issue with that wall over there. So I'll talk a little bit about that wall later. So what I'm going to do here first off is make sure this wall is actually 60 inches wide, and then I'll cut the DensShield down on the 8-foot side to that 60 inches. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take my 3 measurements. I'm going to start with the 3-inch mark measurement first. And let's go ahead and measure this out. Right there. Lock that in place. And I've got about 60 1/8. So hopefully you're keeping track of all this for me as I go along, but I got 60 1/8 for our first measurement. I'm going to move up to the 2-foot mark. And lock that in place. Got about 60 1/16 for that measurement. We're going to move up to our 3-foot 9-inch mark now. Lock that in place. And we've got 60 1/8 roughly, 60 1/16. So we've got our 3 measurements there. 60 1/16 is the most narrow of the measurements. I'm probably going to cut the backer board at around 60 inches just to have a little bit of space, because I also have to get the backer board to the back wall and then get it on the back wall. So I don't want to have it be too tight back here and have issues installing it. Okay, so I'm going over the personal protective equipment I'll be wearing, and check out the video that I did that compares DensShield to drywall for more information. So I'm wearing goggles, a mask, some work gloves, and a long sleeve shirt because of DensShield's fiberglass. So both ends of this sheet of DensShield are damaged, so I'm going to make cuts on both ends to arrive at 60 inches. And I'm using a standard drywall T-square and a utility knife with a sharp blade. And what I'll do here is hold the T-square with my left hand, place my left foot against the T-square to hold it in place, then score the DensShield 3 times. I scored it 3 times because the remnant is not very wide, so I wanted to make sure it broke off cleanly. After scoring the board, I used my knee to help bend it. I then used the utility knife to cut through the backside. To clean up the cut edge of the board, I lightly ran my rasp up and down it. You can also use the backside of the utility knife blade. I basically just repeat this process on the other end of the board at the 60-inch mark, so I'm just going to skip ahead. Alright, so I've got the backer board material in the bathroom, and as you can see it's angled a little bit, and that's just to kind of remind myself that I need to get it past that shower valve over there, since it is a full width of the bathroom. So I do have some shims down over there, and that's to space the backer board about 1/8 of an inch off the lip of the tub. So to not confuse you, I mentioned early on that I was not going to leave any space between the DensShield and the tub lip. So I ended up not using the shims and just stuck to the instructions. Alright, so I finally got the DensShield up on the wall, and part of the problem was I hadn't cleaned off the edges of the board enough, and also my cut on that end wasn't quite straight. So it was just probably, I'd say maybe like a 1/16 of an inch off, which was enough to not allow it to fit on the back wall. So it's really tight in there now. It's right up against the wall. So we got that one done. I just have to screw it off now. I'm going to go ahead and do that next. And then we'll work on the second board up there around the window. I'm using a drywall screw gun to install the screws to a consistent depth. And check out the review that I did on this particular DeWalt drywall screw gun. You can also use a drill attachment. Now, I'm not going to go over all the details on how to install the screws, and I encourage you to watch the video that I did comparing DensShield to drywall. One thing I will stress here is that the screws should be corrosion resistant. Additionally, the screws should be installed at 6 inches on center and have a minimum length of 1 1/4 inches for 1/2 inch DensShield. All right, so the screws are installed in this first board, and I included a few extra screws at the bottom so the board is nice and secure. One thing I wanted to point out is that I originally left out the blocking to support the top edge of this board and the bottom edge of the upper board, thinking that my stud cavities were narrow enough. But I later added it to solidify the transition as recommended in the instructions. All right, so I'm ready to go ahead and install the second board, which is about 29 inches tall and of course 60 inches wide. So the cut that I'm going to make for that board, I'm going to make it at the top so that it's up against the ceiling. I don't want to have it down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so I've screwed off around the perimeter of this board, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut out for the window. I've made an X right there, and I'm going to use the roto zip, but I'm actually going to take the camera out of the bathroom because it's going to probably kick up a lot of dust, and I don't want to ruin my camera. So I'm going to come back and show you what I've done when I'm all finished. All right, so I've got the window cut out in the DensShield, and you can tell around the top of the window it's a little bit jagged, and that's because I didn't have the bit set deep enough to use the framing as a guide. I didn't realize that until I got partway in, and then I adjusted and everything else went pretty much okay, except for when I got around close to the Protecto wrap, which started to kind of melt a little bit as I was cutting. So I ended up grabbing the drywall saw and cutting out some of that DensShield and then kind of fine-tuning it with the roto zip. Alright, so I got everything all screwed off, and right around the window I added some screws to make sure that the DensShield is nice and tight against the framing. So that's it. See links in the description below. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check us out on social media. And thanks for watching.